Success isn't about luck, timing, or waiting for the perfect moment. It's about what you do every single day and how you structure your life to keep moving forward no matter what. Most people spend their lives chasing goals, thinking that hitting a target will suddenly change everything. But the truth is, goals alone are fragile. They rely on motivation, on willpower, on feeling inspired, and those things come and go. What actually creates lasting results is a system that guides your actions, builds habits, and produces progress consistently, even when you don't feel like it. Imagine living each day with a framework that keeps you on track, that nudges you toward growth, that makes success inevitable. A system doesn't care if you're tired, distracted, or stressed. It keeps moving, keeps producing, and keeps building momentum. Over time, the small steps it enforces accumulate into life-changing outcomes. This isn't theory. This is how people who achieve extraordinary results structure their lives. They don't rely on fleeting motivation. They rely on systems that carry them forward. Today, you're going to see how to build that kind of system. You'll learn how to create habits that outlast motivation, how to link your actions to who you want to become, and how to design routines that function even when life gets in the way. You'll discover the power of cues, accountability, small wins, and stacking habits. And you'll understand how to let the system guide you when discipline runs low. By the end, you'll see that success is not about occasional bursts of effort. It's about daily, consistent actions supported by a strong, adaptable system. This is not about perfection. It's not about pushing yourself until you break. It's about building a framework that works, that supports you, and that produces results automatically. When you focus on systems instead of goals, you stop chasing fleeting motivation and start creating momentum that lasts. Today is the day to understand how systems transform ordinary effort into extraordinary results, and how you can structure your life so that success happens naturally day after day. Part 1. Build habits that outlast motivation. When you depend on motivation alone, you set yourself up for inconsistency. Motivation feels exciting when it's there, but it fades as soon as life throws something heavy at you. That's why the people who move forward in life aren't the ones who simply wait to feel motivated. They're the ones who build habits that keep them moving when motivation disappears. Habits work quietly in the background. They don't ask for energy. They don't demand excitement. They don't wait for you to feel inspired. They take over and make progress automatic. The real power is in creating habits that live longer than your emotions, because your emotions will rise and fall. But habits stay steady when you train them well. Think about how you brush your teeth. You don't stand in front of the mirror every night asking yourself if you feel motivated enough to do it. You don't debate whether today is the right day. You simply pick up the brush, put on the paste, and do it. That's how powerful a habit can be. Now imagine if you viewed the same kind of automatic behavior around your health, your finances, your work, or your personal growth. Imagine not needing to argue with yourself about going to the gym, because your system makes it automatic. Imagine not fighting yourself to read or study daily, because it's already part of who you are. That's how you begin to outgrow the trap of chasing motivation. The truth is, motivation is a spark, but habits are the engine. The spark gets you started, but only the engine keeps you moving down the road. When you depend on habits, your growth doesn't stop just because you feel tired, discouraged, or uninspired. Habits carry you through those moments. They give you progress when your feelings aren't cooperating. And that is what separates people who stay stuck from people who keep climbing higher. It begins with a small choice that you repeat until it becomes natural. Think of the person who wants to get healthier. If they wait for the day they feel highly motivated, they might go to the gym a few times, but sooner or later they'll stop. But if they decide every single morning to put on their shoes and walk for 10 minutes, it slowly becomes part of their daily rhythm. One day becomes two becomes a week, and soon it's no longer a fight. It's simply what they do. That's how habits outlast moods, because the system no longer depends on how you feel. Every great achievement is built on habits that seem small in the beginning. Writing a book doesn't start with an entire manuscript. It starts with the habit of writing a little every day. Financial freedom doesn't happen in one paycheck. It happens when you build the habit of saving and managing your money consistently. A strong body doesn't appear after one workout. It's created through habits that turn exercise and nutrition into a lifestyle. Once the habit is there, motivation becomes an extra bonus, not a requirement. There will always be days when you don't feel like doing what needs to be done. Days when the energy is gone, when the mood isn't right, or when excuses feel stronger than discipline. That's where habits step in. Habits don't ask you how you're feeling. They guide your actions regardless of your mood. They give you stability when your emotions want to pull you off course. That's why the smartest thing you can do for your future is to build habits so solid that you can lean on them when discipline feels heavy. You must also understand that habits are built on repetition, not on intensity. It's not about doing something perfectly one time. It's about showing up over and over until the act becomes part of you. If you want to read more, don't wait for a free weekend to read a whole book. Start with 10 minutes a day. If you want to improve your health, don't aim for 3 hours in the gym once a month. Start with something you can repeat daily without fail. Small, consistent steps create habits, and those habits create transformation. When you commit to building habits that outlast motivation, you stop relying on willpower alone. Willpower is like a battery, it drains quickly. Habits, on the other hand, are like the wiring of your house. Once installed, they run the lights automatically every day without asking for your permission. This is the kind of system you need if you want results that last longer than your mood. Think about how habits also protect your focus. If you spend every day deciding whether to do the things you know are important, you waste energy on decision-making. But when a habit is in place, the decision is already made. You don't ask yourself if you should. You simply do it. That mental freedom gives you more energy for the bigger choices in life. Habits clear the clutter from your mind and make progress feel easier. Now, you may wonder how long it takes to build such habits. The answer is not about days or weeks. It's about commitment. The habit forms as long as you repeat it consistently. Some may stick in a month. Some may take longer. What matters is not how long it takes, but whether you're willing to stay with it until it becomes automatic. Once it's wired into your life, the effort drops and the reward grows. The people you admire, the ones who achieve things you dream about, don't live on endless motivation. They rely on systems of habits. They've trained themselves to act, whether they feel like it or not. That's why their progress looks steady, even in tough times. The good news is, you have the same ability. You can build a foundation of habits that serve you no matter what life brings. The best part is, once a habit takes root, it doesn't just stay, it multiplies. When you stick with one healthy habit, it often spills into other areas of your life. A habit of exercising may encourage you to eat better. A habit of reading may inspire you to write. A habit of saving money may inspire you to invest. Habits have a way of creating a chain reaction that strengthens your entire life. So if you're serious about changing your future, don't wait for motivation to push you. Build habits that carry you even when motivation runs out. Choose actions that you can repeat daily, no matter how small they seem. Stick with them long enough, and they'll turn into systems that protect your growth, even on your weakest days. That is how real transformation happens. Motivation might start the journey, but habits keep you walking until you reach the life you've been working for. Part 2, tie your system to your identity, not just tasks. When you create a system that is tied only to tasks, you make progress feel like a checklist. You finish one task, then another, but deep inside you still feel like the same person you were yesterday. That's why many people work hard, but never really change. They do the actions for a while, but when pressure comes, they stop, because the system is only on the surface. The real shift happens when you connect your system to your identity. When your actions are not just things you do, but reflections of who you are, you no longer fight yourself. You act in alignment with your identity, and that creates lasting growth. Think about it this way. If you see yourself as someone who's trying to exercise, you'll always be negotiating in your mind. You'll say, I need to go for a run today. But if you see yourself as a healthy person, you don't need to argue with yourself. You run because that's what a healthy person does. The same goes for reading. If you see yourself as someone who's trying to read, you'll keep counting the minutes, wondering when you'll be done. But if you see yourself as a learner, you pick up the book because that's who you are. The behavior flows naturally from the identity. Too often people build systems without addressing who they believe themselves to be. They create routines, schedules, and plans, but inside they still hold on to the old picture of themselves. That's why they keep breaking their systems. The old identity always pulls them back. But when you reframe the way you see yourself, your actions follow with less resistance. You don't force discipline. You live it. You don't fight to stay consistent. You act consistently because it matches your self-image. This is why your system must go deeper than just action. It has to reach the level of belief. If you believe you're careless with money, no budgeting app or financial system will help you for long. You'll find a way to break it. But if you change how you see yourself, if you say, I am a responsible person with money, then the budgeting system strengthens your identity instead of fighting it. Suddenly saving doesn't feel like a burden. It feels like a confirmation of who you are. The same principle works in every area of life. If you're building a system for productivity, but deep inside you see yourself as lazy, your old self-image will fight every task. But if you create a new identity and say, I am someone who uses my time wisely, then every productive action becomes natural. You're not working against yourself anymore. You're reinforcing who you are becoming. Think of someone who quits smoking. If they keep saying, I'm trying to quit, they're still tied to the identity of a smoker. That's why it's hard. But if they shift their identity and say, I don't smoke, the system is completely different. The identity makes the action clear. It's not about trying anymore. It's about being. When your system is tied to identity, you live out your habits instead of fighting to maintain them. The reason this matters is because identity is powerful. People will fight harder to stay consistent with who they believe they are than they will for any short-term goal. You can forget goals, you can drop plans, but you won't easily betray your sense of self. So if you want your system to last, connect it to who you are, not just what you do. That's the difference between temporary change and lasting transformation. One practical way to tie your system to your identity is to start with small declarations. Say to yourself, I am the kind of person who values health. Then build a system around it. You wake up early, you stretch, you prepare your meals. Not because it's on a checklist, but because it's a reflection of who you are. If you want to grow financially, start by saying, I am the kind of person who respects money. Then build your system of saving, investing, and tracking around that. It's no longer about forcing actions. It's about living out your identity. This also gives you resilience, because when your identity supports your system, failure doesn't destroy you. If you miss a workout, you don't say, I failed. You say, I am still a healthy person. I'll get back to it tomorrow. If you overspend one day, you don't throw away your budget. You say, I am still a responsible person with money. I'll correct it. The system doesn't collapse because your identity is solid. That's how you keep moving even when things don't go perfectly. Your identity shapes your standards. If you see yourself as average, you'll accept average results. If you see yourself as someone who values excellence, your system will push you higher. You won't settle for half effort because it doesn't align with who you believe you are. Over time, this shift becomes the most powerful driver of your behavior. You no longer need constant reminders or outside pressure, because your inner identity pulls you forward. This is why so many people set goals year after year and never see lasting change. They focus on what they want to achieve without changing who they see themselves to be. They want the result but keep the same old identity, and the two never match. The smarter way is to build from the inside out. First decide who you are. Then design a system that expresses that identity. That way every action becomes a vote for the person you want to be. If you build your system this way, progress feels natural. You stop wrestling with tasks. You stop relying on motivation. You stop starting over every few months. Instead, you live in alignment with your identity, and your system carries you forward with less resistance. That's where true growth begins. And that's how you build a system that not only changes what you do, but changes who you become. Part 3, measure progress with actions, not wishes. Progress is often misunderstood. People talk about what they want. They make lists of wishes and they spend hours thinking about the life they dream of. But when you stop and measure their actions, not much has been done, and that's the trap. Measuring progress by what you wish for instead of what you actually do. Wishing for change feels good in the moment, but it doesn't move you an inch forward. Action is the only thing that can be measured, because action is the only thing that produces results. When you say you want to be healthier, that's a wish. When you put on your shoes and walk for 30 minutes, that's an action. When you say you want financial freedom, that's a wish. When you take 10% of your income and set it aside before you spend, that's an action. Wishing feels like progress because it fills you with hope, but it has no weight in reality. Progress must be tracked in what you do daily, not in what you dream about. Think about the people who talk year after year about writing a book. They describe it, they imagine the cover, they even tell friends about how much they want it. But if you ask them how many pages they've written, the number is 0. On the other hand, someone else may write 1 page a day, quietly, without much talk. After a year, that person has a book in their hands. Not because they wished harder, but because they acted consistently. That's why your system must be built on measurable actions, not just intentions. The problem with wishes is they trick you into feeling like you've done something when you haven't. Saying I want to be fit can give you a small sense of satisfaction, almost like a reward. But nothing changes. Action, on the other hand, might not feel as exciting at first, but it creates real momentum. Every action you take stacks up into a result you can see and touch. And this is where your mindset must shift. You must start measuring progress by the steps you take, not by the dreams you carry. If you want to know whether you're really improving, don't ask yourself what you want. Ask yourself what you did today. Did you invest time in learning? Did you make that sales call? Did you prepare that meal instead of grabbing fast food? Did you put money into savings instead of spending it? These are actions that can be measured. They tell the truth about your progress, while wishes only tell the story you want to hear. It's also important to understand that actions compound. One small action today might not look like much. Reading 10 pages doesn't make you wise immediately. Saving $10 doesn't make you rich today. But if you keep measuring by actions, those small steps add up in ways wishes never could. Wishing has no compounding power. You can wish every day for 10 years and end up in the same place. But consistent action, no matter how small, has a way of multiplying over time until the results become undeniable. Another mistake people make is measuring progress by how they feel. You might feel motivated. You might feel confident. You might feel ready for change. But feelings don't guarantee progress. Actions do. On the days you don't feel like showing up, but you do anyway, that's progress. On the days you feel tired but still commit to your plan, that's progress. Feelings are unpredictable, but actions are measurable. The more you focus on what you do, the less you'll be swayed by the ups and downs of your emotions. When you start tracking your life by actions, you begin to see the truth. If you want to be healthier, count the workouts you did, not the times you thought about going. If you want to grow your business, count the people you reached out to, not the times you sat and planned without execution. If you want to grow in knowledge, count the hours you actually studied, not the hours you scrolled through videos wishing you had learned more. This shift makes your system honest, and honesty is what keeps you moving forward. You also have to remove the illusion of someday. Wishing lives in someday. Someday I'll travel. Someday I'll get in shape. Someday I'll fix my finances. But action lives in today. Today I'll take a step. Today I'll practice discipline. Today I'll do something that leaves me better than yesterday. Progress is never measured in what you'll do someday. It's measured in what you actually did today. Even when results are not visible yet, actions matter. Imagine planting a seed. You won't see the tree tomorrow, but watering it daily is progress. Many people stop too soon because they measure only by the big result, not by the action of watering. They don't see growth right away, so they think nothing is happening. But those daily actions are building the future results. Wishing never planted a seed, never watered the ground. Only action produces growth. Your system must therefore be built on the actions you can control. You can't control how fast the results come, but you can control how consistently you act. If your system is to write daily, measure how many words you wrote. If your system is to get healthier, measure how many times you exercise this week. If your system is to manage money, measure how much you saved this month. These are solid, measurable steps that tell you exactly where you stand. The beauty of measuring actions is that it keeps you accountable. You can't hide behind big dreams if your actions don't back them up. Either you did it or you didn't. This removes excuses and forces you to face reality. And reality, even when it's tough, is what helps you grow. Because once you see where you're lacking in action, you know exactly where to adjust. Wishes don't give you that clarity. Only actions do. Over time, this approach also strengthens your confidence. Every completed action is proof that you're moving forward. When you see yourself showing up day after day, your belief in yourself grows. You no longer need to rely on motivation because your actions prove your capability. That proof builds trust in yourself, and that trust becomes fuel to keep going. The lesson is simple but powerful. Stop giving yourself credit for wishes. Stop telling yourself stories that make you feel good, but leave you in the same place. Start measuring the actions that can be counted. Track the steps you take, no matter how small. Build your system around those actions, and your progress will be real, steady, and undeniable. In the end, results are nothing more than the sum of actions repeated over time. Wishes fade, but actions stay. Part 4, design simple steps you can't ignore. Complicated plans are one of the main reasons people stop moving forward. They sit down with a notebook or an app and design a system so detailed that it feels overwhelming before it even begins. The truth is, if your system is hard to follow, you won't stick with it. That's why the best systems are built on simple steps you can't ignore. Simplicity is not weakness. Simplicity is strength. It's what allows you to repeat your actions consistently without fighting yourself every day. If you think about the strongest habits in your life right now, they're all simple. You wake up and brush your teeth without thinking. You drink water when you're thirsty. You eat when you're hungry. You don't have to motivate yourself for these actions because they are straightforward, easy to start, and built into your daily rhythm. That's exactly how your success system should feel. Automatic, obvious, and too simple to avoid. Imagine someone who wants to build a habit of reading more. If they say, "I'll read for 2 hours every night," the goal sounds inspiring, but quickly becomes intimidating. They may manage it once or twice, but soon it feels too heavy. Compare that with a system that says, "I will read 5 pages every night before I sleep." 5 pages is simple. 5 pages doesn't scare you. 5 pages are easy to do even on a busy day. And when you stick to it, 5 pages turn into chapters, chapters into books, and books into a library. The small, simple step becomes the doorway to transformation. The same principle applies to health. People promise themselves big, dramatic changes. Spend 2 hours in the gym, cut out every unhealthy food, start a strict diet. But after a week, they collapse under the weight of it. On the other hand, someone who designs a simple step: drink 1 extra glass of water, take a 15-minute walk, add 1 serving of vegetables, builds a habit they can't ignore. Over time, that small system grows stronger. They add another step, then another, and suddenly their health looks completely different. Not because of one massive leap, but because of many small, simple steps they repeated. Simplicity removes the excuses. When your system is simple, you can't tell yourself, "I don't have time." You always have time for 5 push-ups, or for 1 page, or for writing a few sentences. By making the step so small, you close the door on procrastination. You create a system that feels doable no matter how your day looks. That's why simplicity wins every time. It disarms your excuses and keeps you moving forward when motivation is low. Some people think simple means unimportant. They believe if the action doesn't feel dramatic, it doesn't count. But the opposite is true. The actions that change your life are often the simplest ones, repeated every day until they become permanent. Waking up earlier, saving a small portion of income, having daily conversations with the people you love. These aren't glamorous steps, but they shape your life more than any big once-in-a-while effort. It's also important to understand that a simple system doesn't mean a lazy system. It doesn't mean doing the bare minimum. It means starting with something so clear and manageable that you can't fail. Once the simple step is locked in, you build on top of it. You don't have to jump from 0 to 100 overnight. You move from 0 to 10, then 10 to 20, until the growth feels natural. This approach keeps you consistent and prevents burnout. Think about someone trying to improve financially. If they say, I'll save half my income starting tomorrow, the system collapses as soon as life expenses appear. But if they design a simple step like saving 1% every paycheck, the system is too small to resist. Once that's automatic, they move to 2%, then 5%. And eventually they build a strong financial foundation. Simplicity allows progress to grow without breaking under pressure. Your brain also loves simplicity. Complicated systems drain mental energy. You spend more time planning and thinking than acting. A simple step, on the other hand, requires little thought. It becomes automatic faster, and when something becomes automatic, it feels lighter, which makes you more likely to stay consistent. There's another benefit too. Simple steps give you quick wins. When you finish your simple action, you feel a sense of progress. That positive feeling builds momentum, and momentum keeps you moving. Without that, you'll feel like you're always climbing a mountain that never ends. But with simple steps, you create steady victories that remind you you're moving forward. Think about a student who wants to improve their skills. If they try to study 4 hours every night, they'll fail after a week. But if they commit to reviewing one concept a day, they succeed daily. Success builds confidence. Confidence builds consistency. And consistency builds results. That's the chain reaction that begins with a simple, easy-to-follow system. So ask yourself, what are the simple steps you can no longer ignore? If you want to improve your health, maybe it's doing 10 squats before breakfast. If you want to grow mentally, maybe it's writing 1 paragraph a day. If you want better relationships, maybe it's sending 1 message of appreciation daily. The point is not the size of the action, but the fact that it's simple enough to do every day without fail. The truth is, most people fail not because they aim too high, but because they make the path too complicated. They create heavy systems that collapse under their own weight. But those who win in life design steps that are light, simple, and repeatable. And because they stick with them long enough, those small actions compound into life-changing results. Simplicity is the secret. Build a system made of steps, so easy you can't talk yourself out of them. Repeat them until they become part of you. Expand them gradually as your strength grows. And one day, you'll look back and realize that the simple steps you couldn't ignore built the extraordinary life you once only dreamed about. Part 5. Make your system flexible, not fragile. Rigidity is one of the fastest ways to break a system. People often design routines so strict that the moment life interrupts, the entire plan falls apart. They think discipline means never adjusting. But real strength is in flexibility. A system that can bend without breaking is the system that lasts. A fragile system demands perfection, and perfection doesn't exist in real life. A flexible system, however, adapts when circumstances change, while still keeping you on track. That's how you stay consistent over years, not just days. Consider someone who promises themselves they'll wake up at 5 every morning to exercise. For a week or two, it might work, but then life interferes. A late night, an early meeting, a sick child, suddenly that rigid system collapses. Because it was built on one narrow condition. Once that condition failed, everything failed. Compare that with a flexible system. I'll exercise daily, but the time can adjust. If the morning doesn't work, the afternoon or evening will. This system bends with life but doesn't stop. The commitment remains. Only the timing shifts. Flexibility keeps you from falling into the all-or-nothing trap. How many times have you heard people say, I missed one day, so I ruined everything. That's a fragile system talking. A flexible system says, I missed today, but I'm back tomorrow. It doesn't collapse because it allows space for real life. It treats consistency as a long-term commitment, not a fragile streak that breaks with one mistake. The truth is, success is never built in perfect conditions. There will always be surprises, setbacks, and disruptions. If your system only works when life is smooth, it won't survive. But if your system is flexible, you can keep moving even during chaos. You may slow down, but you won't stop. And that's what matters most. Staying in the game long enough for the results to appear. Flexibility doesn't mean laziness. It doesn't mean you lower your standards or let excuses control you. It means you design your system in a way that fits different situations without losing direction. For example, if your system is to read daily, don't demand exactly 1 hour at the same time. Say instead, I'll read something every day. Some days it might be 10 minutes, some days an hour, but the identity of being a reader stays intact. That flexibility keeps you consistent. Think about eating habits. A fragile system says, I'll never eat dessert again. One slice of cake at a party and suddenly guilt takes over and people abandon the whole plan. A flexible system says most of my meals will be healthy, but I'll allow space for occasional treats. That approach doesn't break under pressure. It bends, it balances, and it lasts. Flexibility also helps with momentum. When life gets busy, a rigid system demands full effort or nothing. That often leads to nothing. A flexible system asks, what's the smallest step I can do today to stay on track? If you can't run 5 miles, walk 1. If you can't save a large amount, save a small amount. If you can't study for 2 hours, review for 15 minutes. These small adjustments keep the chain of consistency alive, which is far more powerful than stopping completely. Another strength of flexible systems is they allow growth. As you change, your system should change too. What worked for you a year ago may no longer fit today. If your system is rigid, you'll feel trapped, forcing yourself into routines that no longer serve you. But if your system is flexible, you can adjust to your new goals, your new schedule, or your new environment. That's how you keep growing without burning out. Flexibility also builds resilience. When you know your system can adapt, you no longer fear disruptions. You stop being fragile to life's changes. Instead of thinking, if something goes wrong, I'll lose everything. You think, no matter what happens, I can adjust and continue. That confidence makes you stronger. You no longer quit easily because your system is designed to survive setbacks. It's also worth noticing how flexibility removes guilt. A fragile system creates constant pressure. If you miss once, you feel like a failure. That guilt often leads people to quit altogether. A flexible system removes that burden. You don't need to feel guilty about being human. You simply adjust and keep going. Progress continues without the emotional weight of perfection. Look at the people who succeed long-term. Their secret isn't flawless routines. Their secret is the ability to adapt. When business slows, they adjust their approach. When health issues come, they find new ways to move forward. When life throws obstacles, they bend without breaking. This flexibility allows them to stay consistent for years, while others give up because their rigid systems cracked under pressure. So how do you design flexibility into your own system? Start by defining the principle, not just the method. For example, the principle might be daily movement, but the method could be gym workouts, home exercises, or even walks. That way, if one method isn't possible, another can step in. Another way is to create backup options. If your primary system fails, have a smaller, easier version ready. If you can't do your full routine, do the lighter version. This keeps progress alive instead of stopping completely. Flexibility also means listening to yourself. Some days you'll have more energy, some days less. A fragile system ignores that reality and demands the same output daily. A flexible system respects your limits while still requiring effort. On high energy days, you push harder. On low energy days, you scale down but still show up. That balance keeps you moving without burning out. The key is to never confuse flexibility with inconsistency. Flexibility is controlled adjustment, not random action. You still follow your system, but you allow it to shift with life instead of breaking under it. That's what makes it sustainable. A fragile system is like glass. It looks perfect until it shatters. A flexible system is like steel. It bends under pressure, but remains unbroken. If you want your success to last, build a system that adapts to life's realities while keeping you aligned with your principles. Over time, you'll see that the people who reach their goals aren't the ones who followed a rigid plan flawlessly, but the ones who created flexible systems strong enough to survive the journey. Part 6. Stack new habits on routines you already do. The easiest way to build new habits is not by creating an entirely new schedule, but by connecting them to something you already do. The reason most habits fail is because people try to start from scratch. They wake up one morning and decide, I'm going to run an hour every day, or I'm going to meditate for 30 minutes every morning, without linking it to anything familiar. That's a huge mistake. The mind resists sudden changes. It resists disruption. But if you stack new habits onto routines you already follow, you remove friction, and your system becomes effortless. Think about your morning. You probably brush your teeth, have a cup of coffee, check your phone, or prepare breakfast. These actions are already embedded in your life. They are automatic. They require little thought or energy. Now imagine adding a small habit immediately after one of these routines. For example, after brushing your teeth, you do 10 push-ups. After your morning coffee, you write down one thing you're grateful for. After making breakfast, you review your financial plan for 5 minutes. Because you attach these new habits to existing routines, they become easier to remember and easier to complete. The beauty of stacking habits is that it creates a chain reaction. One habit triggers another, and suddenly you have a series of positive actions flowing naturally through your day. You don't have to remind yourself constantly. You don't have to rely on willpower. The previous habit acts as a cue, signaling your brain to move into the next one. It's not about forcing yourself. It's about letting the system guide your behavior automatically. Stacking habits also reduces decision fatigue. Every time you add a new habit without a clear anchor, you must decide when, where, and how to do it. That mental load makes it easier to procrastinate or forget. By attaching the habit to something you already do, you remove those questions. The action becomes a natural extension of an existing behavior. The fewer decisions you have to make, the more consistent you become. Consider reading, for instance. If you want to read more every day, you don't need to block a 2-hour chunk of time immediately after waking up. Instead, stack it onto a routine you already have. Read for 10 minutes after pouring your morning coffee or while waiting for the shower to heat up. By connecting the new behavior to something habitual, you turn reading into a non-negotiable part of your day, instead of a burden that competes with your energy and willpower. Exercise works the same way. Many people fail at starting a fitness routine because they wait for the perfect time or the perfect day. Instead, stack your exercise habit onto something you already do. Put your gym clothes next to your bed and do 5 squats immediately after brushing your teeth. Take a walk right after lunch. Do push-ups while waiting for the kettle to boil. These small stacked habits are easy to remember, hard to skip, and they create momentum that grows over time. Stacking habits also leverages the natural power of your environment. When you attach a new habit to an existing routine, you're using environmental cues as a reminder. The action you already do triggers the new behavior. You no longer rely solely on memory or motivation. For example, if you always make a cup of tea at 4 in the afternoon, you can stack the habit of writing down one goal or reflection for the day right after pouring your tea. The environment cues the habit automatically. Another benefit of stacking is it creates identity reinforcement. Every time you perform the new habit, you reinforce the type of person you want to be. If you stack a gratitude habit after making coffee, every coffee becomes a reminder that you are a grateful person. If you stack a reading habit after showering, Every shower reminds you that you are a lifelong learner. This repeated association strengthens both your actions and your identity simultaneously. Stacking habits also allows for gradual growth without overwhelming yourself. You don't need to overhaul your entire life at once. Start with one habit attached to an existing routine. Once that habit becomes automatic, add another, then another. The process is cumulative. One small action becomes the foundation for a more powerful system. It's not about dramatic leaps. It's about steady, repeated progress that compounds quietly but powerfully over time. It's crucial to choose the right anchor for each habit. Pick routines you do consistently, ideally daily, and with little chance of skipping. Morning and evening routines are often the strongest anchors because they are repeated consistently. Meals, commuting, and bedtime habits are other great opportunities. Attach your new habit to one of these triggers and watch how easily it integrates into your day. Stacking habits also gives you resilience when life gets busy. When everything feels overwhelming, you can rely on the anchor. Even if you're stressed, tired, or distracted, the cue from an existing habit pulls you into the next positive action. This is how stacking habits turn small actions into automatic behavior, even during difficult times. Over time, the stacked habits form a chain of behaviors that define your day. You move naturally from one positive action to another. Instead of relying on motivation or willpower, your system carries you forward. These small, consistent actions compound, creating massive results without ever feeling like a struggle. The key is consistency, not intensity. Stack, repeat, and let the chain grow stronger over time. Finally, stacking habits transforms your entire approach to change. It removes the pressure of overhauling your life overnight. It eliminates excuses, simplifies your system, and creates automatic momentum. Each habit supports the next. And before you know it, you are living in a structure of growth that requires little thought but delivers lasting results. By building on routines you already follow, your system becomes almost unstoppable. Part 7. Use reminders and cues to stay consistent. Consistency is built on cues and reminders. Without them, even the best intentions fade. People often assume they'll remember to act, but memory is unreliable and motivation fluctuates. That's why a system without reminders is fragile. Cues anchor your actions to the world around you. They signal your brain that it's time to act, removing the need to rely on willpower. The more you can embed reminders into your environment, the more automatic your habits become. Think about how your daily life already works with cues. You don't need to consciously remind yourself to brush your teeth. The sight of the toothbrush in the morning routine triggers the behavior automatically. That's how cues work. You can use the same principle for every habit you want to build. Visual cues, auditory cues, time-based cues, even digital alerts. They all serve the same purpose. They prevent you from relying solely on memory and motivation. Reminders don't have to be complicated. They can be sticky notes in visible locations, phone alarms, calendar notifications, or even objects placed strategically around your home. If your goal is to drink more water, place a water bottle on your desk. If you want to read every night, put a book next to your bed. If you want to exercise, keep your workout clothes visible. These small signals consistently nudge you toward action until the habit becomes second nature. Cues also reduce the friction of starting. One of the biggest obstacles to building habits is inertia. The mind resists starting something new. But when a cue is present, the action is prompted automatically. You don't need to debate with yourself. The cue serves as a gentle push, bridging the gap between intention and behavior. Over time, the habit forms so seamlessly that you act without conscious effort. Auditory cues can be powerful too. Alarms, timers, or even a song can become associated with a habit. If you play a specific track every morning and immediately go for a walk, your brain begins to associate that song with movement. Soon, the song itself becomes a trigger, creating automatic behavior. The principle is simple. Pair your action with a consistent cue, and you reduce reliance on discipline alone. Time-based cues are equally effective. If you schedule a habit for the same time each day, it becomes a regular part of your routine. Your body and mind start to expect it. Breakfast triggers your first exercise session. Lunch signals reflection or learning time. Evening signals preparation for tomorrow. By anchoring habits to time, you create a structure that naturally guides your actions. Digital reminders are practical tools in the modern world. Phones, smartwatches, and apps can notify you consistently, creating external cues until the habit takes root internally. A simple notification, "Do your 10 push-ups now," reminds you to act when your focus might otherwise drift. The key is consistency. Over time, the habit no longer needs external prompts. The cues become internalized. Environmental cues also shape behavior without conscious thought. For example, leaving your running shoes by the door makes exercise more likely. Keeping a journal on your desk encourages daily writing. Preparing healthy snacks in plain view nudges you toward better nutrition. By shaping your surroundings, you make it easier for your system to operate automatically. Cues don't just trigger actions. They also reinforce identity. Every time you respond to a cue, you're practicing the person you want to become. You see yourself as someone who acts on commitments. You see yourself as someone consistent, disciplined, and capable. Over time, responding to cues strengthens both your habits and your self-perception. The power of reminders also lies in their ability to interrupt procrastination. It's easy to get distracted by small tasks, messages, or emotions that steal focus. A well-placed cue redirects your attention to what matters most. It's like a nudge that says, "Remember who you are and what you're building." Each small reminder reinforces your priorities and keeps you aligned with your system. Cues can be combined for stronger results. Pair visual, auditory, and time-based signals to create redundancy. This ensures that even if one cue fails, another triggers the habit. For example, a sticky note, a phone alarm, and a dedicated spot for your workout equipment together create a multi-layered system of reminders that keeps you consistent, regardless of circumstances. It's important to remember that cues alone aren't enough. They need to be tied to action. Seeing a sticky note without acting becomes background noise. Hearing a timer without responding is wasted effort. The power comes when cues are immediately followed by the intended behavior. That's how the system takes over and reduces reliance on willpower. Cues also help maintain habits during disruption. Life isn't predictable. Travel, stress, or changes in routine can derail your system. Reminders act as anchors. They bring you back to your habits, even when circumstances shift. The stronger your cue network, the less likely you are to abandon your system during challenges. Consistency, therefore, is built not on motivation, but on smart cues and reminders. They bridge the gap between intention and action. They make habits automatic, reduce decision fatigue, reinforce identity, and protect your system during disruption. Every habit you want to build should have a clear cue that prompts immediate action. Over time, these cues become invisible scaffolding, quietly holding your system together while your life transforms. Part 8, focus on small wins that build momentum. Small wins are the building blocks of long-term success. People often focus only on the big result, thinking that achieving something massive all at once is what matters. But that mindset sets you up for frustration. Real progress doesn't happen in sudden leaps. It accumulates in small, consistent victories. Every tiny success adds energy, builds confidence, and creates momentum that carries you forward, even when motivation dips. Imagine trying to run a marathon without training. If you focus only on the finish line, it feels impossible. But when you break it down into manageable steps, running a mile, then 2, then 3, you start winning small battles. Each completed mile is proof that you're capable. Each step reinforces your identity as someone who can persist, adapt, and grow. Those small wins repeated over time are what turn impossible goals into achievable realities. Small wins also provide immediate feedback. Life often feels overwhelming because we measure progress by distant outcomes. Saving $1,000 or finishing a book might take months. The lack of visible progress discourages people, and they quit. But when you focus on small wins, saving $10 today, reading 5 pages, making 1 sales call, you see tangible results quickly. These victories reinforce your system, reminding you that effort matters and that the path you've chosen works. Momentum is built on repetition. One small win